morning before we came to church, the fire truck and the squad was in our park,
Oh.
right 2 houses down from us. What the devil? The woman had, Melissa, she's been sick for quite a while. She's got some kind of something wrong with her pancreas or something. But anyway, I thought maybe it was something like that, or maybe one of them fell and they needed help to get up because they're both heavy. And come to find out, she just reached down and scratched her ankle with her hand, and she caught a major blood vessel, and just the blood was spurting
Oh my goodness.
out the side of her foot. And so they called the squad and said that her bathroom's a mess. It was a mess, but they had to stitch it to get it to stop.
Oh wow. She got a good one then.
Yeah, but she just did it with her finger.
Sharp nails. Watch them women with long nails.
That's right.
Well, I
That's
don't
right.
think she has long nails. I
Cat
think she
claws.
just did it, just was scratching because it was itching and.
Especially right, you see on the back of your neck.
I think it, unless Chris and Christine show up, it's just gonna be us. Nelson, they're still trying to figure out why he's tired. He said he's so tired he can't he didn't want to try to drive or do anything, so he's got a doctor's appointment Monday. Roger and Sandra are home sick, so remember them. I gotta call and check on Ron and Janice. Ron supposedly passed out the other day, fell backwards and broke his neck, and he's in a brace up in where they live in Michigan, so everybody's falling apart. Y'all guys to quit. But we got revival coming up, so you know that's gonna happen. People are gonna get sick, problems gonna happen, the devil doesn't want us to have it, but we're gonna have
Right.
it, whether he likes it or not, so
We're gonna knock him out.
we're gonna,
find for victory, we're fighting from it.
that's exactly right. So invite everybody you can to the revival. I know it's a couple weeks away, but we wanna make sure we have a good crowd, good attendance. When it gets closer, we'll talk about Thursday night, but, yeah, we're gonna,
On Thursday night.
we normally have food on the last night. Hopefully he don't have to go home so he can stay with us this time. Like last year he had to leave to go home. But we'll see what we're gonna do. So we might change some things when it comes to the food things, but I'm praying about that. So we're in Hebrews still, chapter 11. We're gonna just go over real quickly 13 through 16 because that's what we were talking about last week. And I didn't finish all my notes. We had a good Bible study. But these verses, I'll read them again. It says, "These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is in a heavenly, wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city." Remember, these people of faith died without receiving all that God had promised, but they never lost their vision of heaven or that new country. So there was, to be sure, a degree of earthly fulfillment that had been experienced, but this only served as a reminder of greater realities. They welcomed those greater transcendent realities, although they only saw them from a distance. It says participants in the new covenant see them, and then one might say from now or from near. See, we're supposed to be looking for that same city, not what we have here. Even if some things are beautiful here, this is not our home. The earthly manifestations of God's faithfulness never were perceived as being of ultimate importance. They merely were pointers to a far greater reality. So if their goal had been an earthly inheritance, they could have returned back to where they came from. But the point is, they did not. The implication can hardly be missed that our author does not want his readers to return back to their previous ways. Or in their case, he didn't want them to go back to Judaism. So we need to not let the incomparable, transcendent realities that await them motivate them to the faithfulness in the present, but in the same way that the exemplars of the fourth did. We got to look at these as, listen, they kept going even though they didn't get what they were reaching for here, but they were promised what was after. Abraham didn't get to see all of his descendants, you know, there's no way. But he believed it was going to happen. You got to look at all these before them, you know, Noah, Enoch. Remember, Enoch was translated, was taken. So in verse 16, it says the assertion that God is not ashamed to be called their God calls us back to an Old Testament verse. And that's in Exodus chapter 3, verse 6. And I'll read it to you when I get there. It says, moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. Jesus also quoted that same verse in Matthew 22, verse 32. But when Jesus remarks that God is not God of the dead, but of the living, the implication is that the patriarchs will, in connection with the resurrection, fully inherit the transcendent promises together with us. And that's verse 40 of this chapter. It says, God having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect. So God's got something better for each and every one of us. Does anybody got anything on those before we go to 17? That was just a quick recap of what we did last Wednesday. So we're going to read, I'll do 17 first.
I'm sorry, before you
Mhm.
continue, I'm loving that right there.
What's that? Oh, behind us?
Yeah, I'm loving it.
Okay. 17, it says, by faith, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son. So that word tried in the Greek, it means to test, or that is to endeavor, to scrutinize, to entice or discipline. It also means to say, examine, or go about to prove. So basically, God was not tempting him in a bad way. I don't want people, when people hear the word tempt, they're thinking, oh, something evil. That's not what he was doing. He was testing his faith. But the most impressive example of Abraham's faith is found in the offering of his son, Isaac. I mean, you think about it. If God asked you, which some people think he does today, which he doesn't, but if God asked you to sacrifice your only begotten son, what would you say?
Right now, the way Brock's been, yeah.
Yeah. Every one of us would say no. But our author reminds us the fact that this son was intended to be the instrumental in the fulfillment of the covenant that God made with Abraham, he that had received the promises. God did that for a reason. He was not going to let him actually sacrifice his son. He just wanted to see if Abraham was going to do it, if he was going to be faithful. In 18 and 19 it says, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. It says, in Isaac shall thy seed be called. God did not let Abraham take Isaac's life because God gave the command to test Abraham's faith. He took God at his word, which displays a remarkable confidence, reasoning that if Isaac had to be killed, Abraham believed that God could also raise him from the dead. So he was already believing that, you know what, God's telling me to kill my son, that's fine, I'll do it, but God's going to raise him back up.
Yeah.
That was his mindset. I don't think that could be my mindset. You know, it's one of those things that I don't think our faith is where Abraham's was. And it needs to be. but I don't think our faith is there. We say it is. Abraham had some faith that's beyond explanation, because I can't explain how much his faith was to what we see today. I mean, you think about it. Instead of taking Abraham's son, God gave him a whole nation of descendants through Isaac. All of that came through Isaac. That's how he blessed Abraham with the covenant. It wasn't actually through Abraham, you know. Him and Sarah only had one child, Isaac. But it was through Isaac that he was going to do it. But I like what this says, and I wrote this down. Because Abraham was willing to give up everything for God, he received back more than he could have ever imagined. Because he was willing to give up everything for God, he received more back than he could have ever imagined.
About the same as Job.
Yeah. You think about it, he got double of what he had in the beginning. But Abraham was willing to give it all up. Where does that put you and I? Are we willing to give it all up if God asks us to? He's only asked us for a reasonable service, and sometimes we have issues with that. We would rather do some things that we want to do, or go here and go there, or God tells us to call this person, oh, we're too busy. God tells us to pray for this person, we're too busy. Or I forgot, or this or that. Are we willing to give up everything for God? And then God will reward us in the end.
Well, I think right now people don't, if you sit there and say give everything up, people might say that I give up this, I give up that. Really, they don't.
Mm-hmm.
They ain't even giving up a fraction of what this even talks about.
They don't. It's one of those things that we do what we want to do, when we want to do it, how we want to do it, and God forbid God gets in the way. But if we need something, or we want something from God, for those couple seconds or day or so, we give everything to God.
Yeah.
Until we go to sleep and wake up next morning and we're like, oh, back to our old selves. It's God wants it daily.
I wouldn't even think God would give it to you, even if you did sit there and say, well, I give this up or one other thing, because he already knows what you're going to do to begin with, so it's an invalid thing.
He knows the intent of your heart.
Without faith, it's impossible to please him.
Yep. So think about this. The story of the sacrifice of Isaac becomes a foreshadowing of the sacrifice of Christ, including even the deliverance of both granted in different ways. So you think about the figuratively speaking, Isaac, like Christ, was received back from the dead. Now they have this thing, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right, but I want to say it's Akedah. It's Akedah. It's known as the binding of Isaac. So if you ever see that word, the Akedah, Akedah, it refers to the binding of Isaac. So our author's dependence on the story of Genesis 22 reflects the popularity of the story for contemporary Judaism. The story known as the binding of Isaac was important, especially to Jewish liturgies for the celebration of the Jewish New Year. It goes on to say that this, they use a lot of versions from the Apocryphy. But it says the New Testament story of God sending his own son to die as a sacrifice obviously echoes the binding of Isaac in striking ways. Instead of only son, the Bible uses the word beloved. Both words are used of Christ in the New Testament. The story perhaps also echoed in Romans chapter 8. But they say that Akedah is also a sign of Abraham's faith that's pointed out in James chapter 2 in a way quite similar to our passage. But I just think it's pretty neat that you can, if you really would look at the Old Testament, you're going to see Christ all through it. Christ is through the entire Old Testament. Every story resembles him. Isaac resembles, a way of it. But some believe when God provided the ram for the sacrifice, in effect, Isaac was delivered from death. He was, you think about it. When they saw the ram caught in the thicket, that's when he led his son up and they used the ram as the sacrifice. And nowhere does it say that Isaac fought his dad when his dad was trying to tie him down. Think about it. That's amazing faith. Either he had enough faith that, well, if my dad does this, God will bring me back, because his dad probably talked to him about God and taught him about God, and because Isaac probably knew, what had to happen. But nowhere is it recorded that they fought, that he tried to stop him, that he tried to talk him out of it. I know if it was me, I would have. Dad, are you sure you heard this right? You're gonna sacrifice me? I gotta carry the wood. You carry the wood. Let me enjoy my last. It's kind of one of those things. But nowhere does it say in the Bible that they argued, fought, or anything.
Does it say how old Isaac was?
How old he was? Let me see. I have to look back. What is it? That was in Genesis 21. Alright. I don't know, we'll have to see here. Well, Abraham was 100. Got the thing here for Isaac. It's not given his age. Well, he had to be old enough to help him carry all the stuff up there.
I could be 5 years
So,
old.
so was he 100 when he attempted to sacrifice Isaac?
Abraham was 100 when Isaac was born.
Can you imagine a father being 100 and
Yeah,
the mother, what, 92?
Nobody's 100% for sure, but one says, since he referred to him as a boy, that he was 12 years old or younger, and then some said he was between 5 and 36.
That's a lot.
That's what I'm saying, so you never know.
Nobody knows.
Nobody,
Yeah.
Let's just say he was 12 years old.
I don't recall
it doesn't
saying
say,
it in the
but
Bible.
people speculate.
Because if he didn't fight back, a grown man would fight back if he's going to be sacrificed. So he would have to be a young child or something with that mindset that, well, my dad says this, I'll do it.
Who knows? All I know is nobody argued, nobody fought. He was gonna do it. So
I'm trying to remember, I think I did a Bible study several years ago, and they had come up with that he was 9. That's what I wanna say, that he was 9 years old.
Google says about 10. It was about 10.
about 9, yeah, it's still
Between 9 and 12.
those ages. They still would argue. You ever been around a 9 and 10-year-old today?
Today.
So all right.
Kids.
Not a good while.
What's that?
Shoot, back then that
Not
10-year-old was
long.
hunting.
Yeah.
I live in a 55 and over community.
Lucky you. All
They
right.
still argue.
I can imagine.
Old babies.
So we'll look at 20 and 22. It says, by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph and worshiped, leaning upon the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when he died, made mention of the departing of the children of Israel and gave commandment concerning his bones. So these next 3 interconnected examples of faith, each of which points forward to the one that follows. and then hints to the future. So each one leads up to the next one. Now Isaac was able to bless Jacob and Esau with regard to matters yet in the future. Notice what it says there. He blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. Remember, Isaac was the son promised to Abraham and Sarah. And it was through Isaac that God fulfilled his promise to give Abraham countless descendants. Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. Now God chose Jacob, the younger son, through whom to continue his promise to Abraham. It was not through Esau. Anybody know why?
Because Jacob stole Esau's, wait, no, not, wait, was it?
What did Esau give up?
It's right.
His birthright. Why?
Birthright.
For a thing of stew.
Right.
That's, yeah.
Okay? So God used the younger to fulfill his covenant.
Yeah.
The verb blessed means to pass on the conventional promises and the associated position of privilege. So that's what Isaac was doing. So if you look at verse 21, by faith Jacob, when he was dying, blessed both the sons of Joseph. You think about it like this. It says, it's a surprise here to read, not of Jacob blessing his 12 sons. Remember the tribe? All 12 tribes came from Jacob. Jacob didn't bless them. Okay? Rather, he blessed his 2 grandsons, in which he deliberately favored Ephraim, the younger of the 2, over Manasseh. That's in Genesis chapter 48. His insistence upon favoring Ephraim was based on his faith in the future that he foresaw for him. The strange inclusion of the last clause of the verse 21, drawn from the Septuagint of Genesis 47 verse 31, the Hebrew, by different pointing of the same constant or consonants, uses the word bed for staff. May point to the appropriateness of worship in the context. It says he blessed both the sons of Joseph and worshiped leaning upon the top of his staff. Some say bed, but there's a difference. If you look at verse 22, Joseph is set forth as a model of faith. So our author signals out that Joseph, as he was close to death, by faith spoke prophetically of the exodus from Egypt. Again, we have the future affirmed by faith. The unusual note about his bones also is an indicator of Joseph's faith in their deposition of the promised land back in Exodus 13 and also Joshua 24, reminds us of God's faithfulness to his promises. Remember, he talked about that they were going to bury his bones at this other place, so they fulfilled it. But all this is being brought back. Remember, Joseph was one of Jacob's sons. So it's one of those things that it's funny how he wanted to bless his grandsons than he did one of his own. I guess some feel that way today when they have grandkids. Man, I love my grandkids more than I love my kids. I've heard some joke around like that, but I think it's funny. Faith means trusting in God and doing what he wants, regardless of the circumstances. I'll read that to y'all again. Faith means trusting in God and doing what he wants, regardless of the circumstances. Y'all better talk, because I only got a half a page left. I thought for sure we were going to get more into this, but y'all have just been like dead silent. Nobody's wanting. I'm like, I was like, well, I got enough, man. I got 4.5 pages of notes. I'll be able to. Nope, y'all ain't talking much.
I'll talk more this Wednesday than I have any other, so that's on me.
There you go. Anybody got anything? I'm only gonna do one more verse, cause that's all I have notes for. So is there anything on those that you wanna talk about on those, what is it? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph? Anything about faith?
It didn't say anything about how Abraham's wife felt about sacrificing their son.
No, doesn't say anything even in Genesis?
I guess the women had nothing to say about anything, just like now.
She might not have known, cause he was just going off with his men.
Yeah, he just,
Either that or
you know.
she had it coming.
That, or she probably learned from when she laughed. You know, I might need to trust my husband a little more next time. Or I might get something else. Probably, I don't want another kid, let me stay quiet. 90-something years old, I don't wanna have another one, you know? God would be like, you want another one? Here, this time I'll give you twins.
Well, they probably didn't age like they do now, being at 90 then. We don't really know, but I'm just saying, if
They
they had the
lived
kids.
hundreds of years back then.
Yeah, so.
Well, that was pre-flood.
Yeah, they didn't have air conditioning, they didn't have preservatives, they didn't have all the stuff we have today, so they lived off of God's land that was still rather new, very new.
But them living as long as they did, you think their calendar system was different than it is now?
I don't
Where like
know.
our year could be
Did they even have?
where they had like like say our 1 year would be probably equal to 2 years or 3 of their years because of the way our calendar system runs.
The only difference that I know is God says a day is like 1,000 years to him and 1,000 years is a day. So them, were they saying that? I look at it as what we think of. If they were 100 years old, they were 100 years old. But you gotta remember, they lived longer, their bodies did different than what we have today.
Yeah.
Plus, you gotta remember too, I think it was, where was it at, that gave the lifespan of 70 years is the normal lifespan for a human now, and that was in the Old Testament. So it changed after the flood, like you were saying, after the flood, all that changed. So it's one of those things that, yeah, I wouldn't wanna live that long today, are you kidding me?
Yeah, cause the only time that they specifically talk about dates is like when they did their sacrifices, it was the 10th month, and the 6th day, or, you know what I'm saying? It was just, that's the only time they were specific about when they did stuff back then.
Cause I know there's a lot of different calendar systems.
Well, the Jewish calendar stuff, but I mean, the day is still a day, a year is still a year, they're just, their dates are different than ours, okay, but I mean, like, a year is still a year. It just, like, like, Sabbath is not Saturday, Saturday's not supposed to be Sunday, we do it on Sunday. They do it on Saturday, on the Middle East and stuff, so it's, we got things a little backwards, I guess, you could say.
That's what you get for being American.
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine, it's just weird being, back then, I think in order for how people lived so long, part of that is they wasn't eating the foods like we eat now. They wasn't taking the medications, they didn't have doctor's cares and everything to screw their body system up, and they was living by design of God then. They didn't put their faith in other things of medicine and witch doctors and all this stuff. They just lived how God wanted them to live, so I think that was the.
Well, you can think they had nowhere to store food, so everything they ate was daily. You know, it's not like they could butcher a cow and
Wasn't
put it up
microwave.
somewhere. You know, there was no McDonald's back
Go to
then.
that salt
so
pile
they
out there and get that.
Didn't have all that stuff, you know, they ate a lot of, it was all very, and they worked outside. You know, they were always outside. I don't think it was as hot back then as it is now, because we're getting closer and closer to the Lord coming back, and things are changing, and it has to because he says it in the Bible. But they still had the same things that we had. I mean, it wasn't until the flood that they really had all the rain. They hadn't seen it. But God was still, you know, plenishing everything and feeding them. A lot different back then, you know. Anybody else? Or we go to Verse
This is
23.
like nitpicky, so if there was no rain before the flood, does that mean that like all the trees were just living without water?
God was probably feeding them. Remember, when they were in the wilderness, God fed them day and night with manna, with dew. I mean, so it's kind of like, you think about it with the, he can take, if he takes care of the sparrow, he takes care of you and I in ways that he can. I mean, but yeah, it says that even before the flood, nobody had seen it. Nobody didn't believe, they didn't believe Noah. When the raindrops, they're probably looking up going, huh. And then it started coming out, it had to come down hard. You think about it. It only rained for 40 days and 40 nights, but they were on the boat longer than that. It wasn't after the 41 day they were able to get off. They floated around for a long time until the waters receded. So it was kind of like, that's some heavy rain. We think it's heavy here. We ain't seen nothing like that. For it to flood the entire earth in 40 days,
It'd have to be a come down of like really, really a lot of
it
rain.
had to be,
You
the
see it
heavens
real
opened
bad,
up.
How to get you wet.
I mean, it had to be so much rain because it created the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon was created from the receding waters of the flood. They proved that. You can go look at the Creation Museum and they'll show you how it was done. And then they show you a replica of a full dinosaur that was impacted in the Grand Canyon. That they got the bones, and it's awesome. It's awesome. They said, oh, it took billions of years. This earth ain't even been here billions of years. God made that. I want to go see it. I've seen pictures, but I want to go see it one day. Maybe one day.
It's beautiful.
Go see
It is.
what?
The Grand Canyon.
Oh, yeah.
I want to so bad.
It's truly breathtaking.
I can imagine.
My dad said if you stand at the side of it, pictures do nothing, movies do nothing. Stand there and just take that view in, it's like
Hundreds of
breathtaking.
miles.
Yeah.
Just, it's amazing.
How many years between the flood and Christ was born?
Well, you got from creation to, what did it say? Abraham was 2,000 years. From Abraham to Jesus was 2,000 years. From Jesus to us now is 2024. So the earth is 6,024 years old. So it's that's a long time. You think about it. But they say we've been here millions and billions of years.
Dinosaurs are hundreds of thousands and.
Yeah.
We had dinosaurs. That right there is 100% guarantee because they're talked about in the
Yeah,
Bible.
but they're saying
They're
some
not
of them
that
are
old.
like 1,000,000 years old.
Right.
No. They're called Leviathans and something else starts with a B. It's used. Job talks about them.
Bronchiosaurus.
No, he's so crazy. Well, what's neat is when you go up to Kentucky and you go to those two places, because of fossils that they found and stuff, they have replicated what they thought the animals looked like on the ark. Not what we think today. And what you have to realize is they've evolved over time. And you can put a dog here, that same breed, and put that dog in it like North Pole or Antarctica, and it's gonna look different after because it has to adapt.
Yeah.
So it's just neat how they did all these replicas and stuff, and they have, it's just amazing to see what could have been.
It would be funny though, seeing a Tyrannosaurus Rex chasing a horse and chariot on the Roman people, that mad dinosaur chasing them.
But it is pretty neat. Alright, I'll read verse 23. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. So Moses' parents trusted God for their son's life. Question is, have you trusted God enough to take care of your child? I wrote that question down. I just didn't make that up. That was good when I read it. God has a plan for every person, and your important task is to pray for and prepare your children to do the work that God has planned for them to do. Faith allows us to entrust even our children to God. Now, the word by faith occurs here 4 times. The faithfulness of Moses already has been mentioned back in chapter 3, verse 5 of Hebrews. And the initial words by faith here in verse 23 are connected to Moses only by a passive verb, which was hid. By faith, Moses was hid. Moses didn't have faith. Not on that verse.
No.
It was his parents. By faith, when he was born, was hid 3 months.
He was just a baby.
Yep. They tried to hide him till they couldn't hide him no more. And it was how God orchestrated that out, you know, to put him in the basket, to put him in the Nile River, to have him found, then have his sister go and say, hey, I know somebody that can take care of him, his own mama, to nursing. Isn't that, I mean, just amazing.
That Nile River's dangerous.
Yep. But Moses was the first basket case in the Bible, so he was there. Some of y'all got that, some of y'all just. So the faith of Moses' parents come into view. The word proper or beautiful might imply that he was pleasing to God. The same phrase, known as exceeding fair or beautiful before God, used in reference to Moses in Acts chapter 7, verse 20. So we have to look at it like this, and then since y'all don't have much to talk about, I can't go no further because I don't have any notes. The parents may have understood that God had a special purpose for their son. You have to realize one thing. God has a special purpose for every single person. Whether they want to take it or not, that's up to them. But God has a special purpose. That's why we're created. We're created to serve Him. We're created to love Him. We're created to obey Him. We are not created for ourselves. A lot of people will argue and say that's not true. We are created to do this, whatever we want to do, but that's not what we are created to do. We are created to worship God and serve Him. And yes, if we give our hearts over to Him, then He does have a special thing for us. He has a plan. We can either help that plan or we can hinder it. But guess what? He's going to accomplish what He wants to accomplish. Whether it takes us 2 days, 20 years, He's still going to do it. Yes.
So, since, Isaac was the promised child, so would that mean that since he was the promised child, that the promise would come through him for the generation?
That's where it all came through. Abraham's covenant with God was through Isaac. And then Isaac had Esau and Jacob, and it went through Esau.
It went through Esau?
Yeah, he blessed Esau. Jacob, sorry. Because Esau gave up his birthright, remember? For the pot of stew. So, yeah, but it all went through Isaac. It wasn't through Abraham, but he promised Abraham.
Through his son.
He said, I'm going to give you, look out there at the stars, look at the sand. Your descendants are going to be outnumbered. But it wasn't through Ishmael. It was through Isaac. Even though Sarah made him go with their handmaid and have a child, that's not who God was going to do it through. It was through what God wanted to do, through Isaac.
So it was through, so it could have been, that's his plan through
It was his plan all around.
Isaac.
Even though Abraham didn't try, but started to mess it up, God's still going to accomplish what He wants.
Right.
That's why He gave Sarah Isaac. And it was through Isaac that God fulfilled His covenant for Abraham. So a long lineage that can be traced all the way back. I mean, technically, yes, we all came, but then the flood. So we're part of Noah's family. Because everybody died before then. But you also got to remember, the Old Testament's not actually in chronological order. Second book of the Old Testament should be Job. So it's one of those things that when you look at the dates, Job is the second book of the Old Testament. But they put it way in the middle. So it's one of those things. It's just anywhere you read in the Old Testament, you see Jesus. All throughout the Old Testament. Isaac's a form of Jesus with a sacrifice. You know, you see it all through there. You can't have one without the other. You got to have the old with the new and the new with the old in order to have the Bible. You can't just say, well, we're not going to use Old Testament no more. Why not? Hebrews is all about it. We're learning. It's all about this author of Hebrews constantly bringing up the Old Testament. Psalms, Exodus, Genesis. Especially when we get to chapter 11, it's all about the Old Testament. So you got to know it. You got to read it. I mean, you might not understand all the names or the genealogies and stuff, but you can always trace Jesus all the way back. And it's ironic that his great-great-great-great-grandmama was a prostitute. You know? I mean, God will use anybody as long as we let him. Anybody got anything?
In the Bible, who would you say had the most faith?
Had the most, if you had the, oh wow. That's hard.
I would name either King David or the Apostle Paul.
I don't know. None of them were asked to sacrifice their child, so I'd have to say Abraham.
We
No, Job
what
did a
Job
lot.
went through.
Yeah.
And then you look at Job. It's like, who do you pick? You know, I mean,
Well, it all boils down to you could look at it this way. When you think you got it bad, somebody else has got it worse.
but you know what's ironic? Job didn't make chapter 11 of Hebrews.
No.
So you never know. I mean, can we actually say who had the most? I think faith is faith. They just use theirs better. You know, faith without works is dead. We say we have it. They proved it. You know, they work. Their works proved their faith. And that's weird that Job didn't make
And prove
the Hall of Faith.
works.
There's a lot of them that didn't make it. David, Job, Paul, what was it? Several didn't make that. So it makes you wonder, why did they not?
I can say who probably had the most faith. When Jesus was on the water in the boat, when he looked and
Peter.
said, "Come to me, Peter," and
Peter.
Peter walked on the water, that's
For
having faith.
Couple
right there.
seconds until he took his eyes off, and then
So that proves to you what faith can do.
faith can do a lot of things.
To me,
No,
it's
it
always been John the Baptist,
John the Baptist.
because
is
he
another-
actually left in his womb, being, close to him in his mother's womb. He left in the womb knowing who he was. He moved in his mother's
Leaped.
womb.
Leaped.
Leapt. I left it
Yeah.
there. I left it all the way over
And he
there.
was the forerunner for the Lord. He
Yeah.
had to have his faith constantly. He never could
And
waver
to know
in it.
who he was when he's still in the womb, that's something.
Right.
Hmm.
And then be beheaded because of it.
Yep. There's a lot. I don't know. That's a good question. You know, who had the most? It's like, there's so many you can bring up. It's just, and that's why the author brings just these up. One, for us to be imitators. You know, to look at their faith and try to imitate that faith. Have that same amount of faith. I mean, you got Elijah and Elijah. You know, the one, I want a double portion. It's one of those things that every one of these in the Bible we can take good and bad from. But faith-wise, you got to look at what they went through and how they got through it to realize we could do the same. I mean, he's the same God then as he is now. He's not changed. And as I preached the one day, there's nothing impossible for God. Even when we think something's too far gone, or nobody can fix that, or nobody can help that person, God can. God can. The Bible says, for with God nothing shall be impossible. Nothing. So maybe you see a family that there's no way God, listen, God can, but my prayer is I don't want to see something happen to somebody else to get somebody's attention. I hope it never gets to that point, but sometimes God does that. His ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. We might not understand it. I mean, like the situation, you know, with that gospel family, the Nealons, you know, we don't understand. Here they're out there doing for the Lord, singing for the Lord, but he takes 3 of them home and leaves 1 of them alive. We don't know. You know, but you gotta just trust him. And then we say, oh, that person's health, there's nothing, doctors can't do nothing where it's hopeless. Well, why are you putting your hope in doctors? They're called practicing physicians for a reason. They can't get it right.
Because they don't know.
If they got it right, they would fix it the first time you went. They wouldn't have to prescribe this medicine and then prescribe this one to counteract that one, then prescribe this one to counteract that one. They would get it right the first time. But our hope is more in the man than it is God, and that's where our fault is. We don't think God can fix broken families, broken relationships, broken marriages, but guess what? He can. Because he created all that. He instituted all that together. He can fix it if we would just let him. I posted something, and I let Tina see it a little while ago on Facebook, and I'll read it so I can get it correct, because it was a meme. I thought it was cute. Some might like it, some might not. It says, Jesus is not going to take the wheel until you stop letting Satan Uber drive you around.
Woo!
So, you gotta think about it. When is enough? When are you gonna finally say enough is enough? Here it is, God. You know, we are our own problem. God saves us from ourselves. Remember we learned that in Sunday school last Sunday? We're our worst enemy, and we don't realize it. But we gotta let it go and let God have it. We try to fix everything. We can't either. All we do is mess it up. We think we know better, but I promise you, if God ever needs your advice, he'll ask you. And I guarantee you nobody in this room has had God ask them, hey, what do you think I should do? God ain't never gonna do it, never has, and never will. So just let it go and let him have it. Don't forget, Sunday, 9:15, we will have it open for prayer. Sunday school's at 10. We will have service at 11 and at 4. And yes, I do plan on doing part 2 of Fruits of the Spirit this Sunday, and hopefully part 3 next Sunday, so that I will be done with the Fruits of the Spirit before revival. So be much in prayer about that. God changes it, he changes it. I'm not going to tell him no, but I am striving for doing part 2 because everybody keeps bringing it up. David talked about it in his message. He kept bringing up fruits of the Spirit and this, and I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. If you don't change it, I'll do it, you know. But I'm hoping everybody's taking notes on it. Because if you don't have those in your life, then you are not a Christian. It's that simple. You have to portray the fruits of the Spirit in order to be one of his. If we don't, then we can't go around telling everybody that we are, because our fruit will show. So make sure you're bearing the right fruit, and it's talked about in Galatians. So study it, read over it, get into it, so when we do the next 3, you'll know when I start on it, you'll be like, okay, yeah, I read about that one, I studied on that one, I've got that one down. Because we've already done love, joy, and peace, so now we're going to the next 3. And I don't remember what they are in order. So, all hearts and minds clear? Yes, sir.
I got something going on this week. The Lord knows all about it. Just pray that his will be done.
Amen. And remember, Roger and Sandra, continue to remember Ron Wood as well. Remember David Wine, as he's still here collecting stuff. I'm gonna get it all sent back, because he'll be going back here soon, back to Haiti, so remember him as well. And remember each other, okay? Everybody's dealing with something, and I'm telling you right now, it's gonna get worse before our revival gets here. Just realize that.
Happens every time.
But keep your head up and keep going, don't quit. Because God's a winner. And you're gonna be as long as you don't quit, okay? If you're gonna quit, quit trying to figure it out. Quit trying to fix it. Let God have it, and everything will work out.
Well, I'll tell you something that's helped me out lately is I've started talking to her a little bit more about things, but whatever's going on in your life, it takes, how can I say, it takes a lot to sit there and say, I'm just gonna let God handle it. Just drop the curtain, let God handle it, and be done with it that day. And because we like to hold on to things and it just keeps on burning at us, whether it be with an individual or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you're dealing with an individual, that individual ain't gonna lose no sleep over what's going on with you. They don't care. So why do I need to, and this is what I've had to learn, why do I need to sit there and continue thinking about it? Someone just let God have it. And when God has it, he can take it and deal with it however he sees fit. And then once you accept that, you can move on and it don't even bother you anymore. And that's how I've had to do a lot of things. And lately, if I do that, I learn I don't stay stressed out as much as I normally would. I just let it go. Say, I don't care. You take that problem, you deal with it, not me. And it works. It really works, but I wanted to share that.
Quit Uber. Quit letting Satan Uber you, see? You'll be all right. Let him have the wheel. Gotta give it to him, you gotta let it go. But like he said, not only when you do that, but you gotta ask God to help you accept whatever he chooses. Because it might not be what you wanted. But you gotta remember, he knows what's best. A lot better than you and I know. So you just gotta trust him.
For me, Father.
What's that?
Pastor, just before we came, I got a call from the cardiologist's office and they wanna see me. So my report from my heart thing must come back and
We'll pray that it's all good.
hope they can fix what's going on.
Yeah. Figure it out and it'll be an easy fix. All right. Well, Lord, we just want to thank you tonight for everyone that's here, Lord, and those that are watching online. Lord, you've heard these prayer requests. You know what each one's dealing with, going through, Lord. Medical tests coming up, Lord, and people that are sick right now in our church, Lord. People that are having relation problems, Lord, marital problems, family problems, Lord, work problems. Lord, you know each and every one right now. So, Lord, we ask that your will would be done, that you would help us to let it go, to let our hands off of it, to get out of your way, and to get in your will. Lord, bless this church. Lord, it seems like we're under attack on all sides, Lord, and we know that this was going to happen because we're fighting against spirits and principalities. And we have a revival coming up that I know you're going to do something wonderful at, and the devil's not happy. So, Lord, we ask that you would strengthen us, encourage us, help us to stick together. Help us, Lord, to stay the course that you put in each and every one of our lives. When we leave here tonight, Lord, please keep us safe, protect us, watch over us, and bring us back to the next appointed time, Lord. And before that, Lord, just help us to be Jesus to somebody. And we love you and we thank you. In your name we pray. Amen.
Mhm.
Thank you. We'll do it, and I'll bring some of them on Sunday. On my
Okay.
pants and the less, and we'll